look out now. It's the Bourbon and Banter podcast, the biggest and most honest podcast in all of bourbon. That's right, friends and neighbors. We got everything you need right here to drink curious. So sit back, grab a pour, and check your feelings at the door, because we're here to lay it down for you as only Bourbon and Banter can. Now that we're approaching holiday season, our bourbon consumption goes up to match our intake from that table of desserts over in the corner. You know the one. That's right, the one that Grandma had out on the porch. Pumpkin pie, pecan pie, apple pie, strudel, cookies, all of your favorites just waiting for you to make a dent in them. That's right, nothing helps cleanse the palate from those delightful morsels like America's native spirit. So forgive us if this podcast plays back at halftime. We move a little slower than usual this time of year, and let's be honest, we don't move too fast to begin with. Hold on to your Snickerdoodles, folks, because here we go.
All right, Bob, Snickerdoodle, Snickerdoodle, Snickerdoodle. That is my favorite cookie name to say of all time.
Snickerdoodle pairs so well with bourbon. Just the cinnamon and the sugar. It goes beautifully with a nice cask strength high rye bourbon.
Ooh, tasty. Well, I don't have any Snickerdoodles yet because it's not Christmas. It's not the holiday season.
You don't know. Wait a minute. Hold on. Just because it's the holiday season and people eat you can eat a Snickerdoodle at any time, just like you can eat a Christmas cookie at any time. The worst thing people do is save those cookies just for the holidays. Eat them all year round. You know, cookies have feelings too, folks. They want to be enjoyed all year round, just like everything else. So don't just save the Snickerdoodles for holiday time. Have them all year round. And speaking of Snickle, we're going to go to the Snickle and Chief here. Go ahead, Pops.
Wow. Number one, off with a bullet. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Bennett. Bob, you know, as you were doing that intro and you were talking about the pumpkin pies, the pecan pies, the apple pies, the strudel, blah, blah, on and on and on. I started thinking about that old cartoon. I don't know if you remember that one where they had a little piggy and he went to bed and he had the dream that he was in the factory eating all the food and he got so big and he got strapped in a chair by the mad scientist. Do you know that cartoon?
Well, I had a dream like that. It was a nightmare, though, because it actually happened to me. I used to do that. I'd go over to my grandmother's, and she'd have a table out on the back porch, and I'd go eat everything, and then my parents would strap me in a chair so that I couldn't get out there and finish off the, devil's food cake. So that was more of a nightmare for me, but I didn't know that they made it out. Who do I need to sue? I got some money coming to me if they made a cartoon out of my life story.
Unfortunately, though, I believe this cartoon predates both of us by a decade or two, so...
You know, it's funny about that. I used to get a birthday card from my parents, and I got it multiple times. They forgot that they bought it. It said, "Son, you really take the cake and the pie and the cookies and the ice cream," and had all this guy on the front, but happy birthday. So clearly people are ripping me off, and I am owed some money from some of you motherfuckers out there.
Is that the card where they kept changing the return address so you couldn't find your way home?
You know, I tell you what, I've always had a hard time with that. You know, my father took me to the zoo one time, and he was hoping they'd keep me, but they kept sending me back. So I don't know.
Well, best laid plans. So anyway, how you doing, man?
I'm all right. All right. We are recording in the morning, and one of my favorite things is morning bourbon. Oh, some of the bourbon tastes fantastic before 10 a.m.
Yes, it does, and it's finally gotten cold here in St. Louis where we are recording, so that's a plus, too, because bourbon, once again, when it's cold, so delightful.
It's delightful all the time, but, I was in shorts and a T-shirt on Thursday. There's snow on the ground right now. What the hell is going on out here?
Well, welcome to St. Louis. Well, you know what, Bob? I have to tell you, this unseasonable weather shit that's going on is happening everywhere, because last weekend I took a trip up to Ypsilanti, Michigan. So I'm up in Michigan in November, right? I'm thinking, I got to pack a sweater, pack a coat for my coat, maybe some mittens, and a parka for good measure. And it was 65 degrees. No sweater, no coat, nothing went in my bag. It was like Indian summer in St. Louis.
That sounds about right. Sounds about right. You can't count on anything. Nope. Weatherman is actually ancient Greek for liar. That's what that that term means.
Right, it's the only profession, if you can be right 20% of the time, you get an A+, right?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, Ypsilanti, by the way, I'd never been up there. I've been to Detroit, but never outside to Ypsilanti. Went up there for a gala for an organization, a great organization called A Kid Again. This is a not-for-profit that exists to help kids who have life-threatening conditions be a kid. So basically every month they are throwing on different adventures that these kids in the program get to attend for free. But it gets even better in that it's just not the kid that gets to attend these. It's also their siblings, their family members. So things like going on zoo excursions, going to amusement parks, going to races. One of the big partners with A Kid Again is Coletta Motorsports and Coletta Air. Fantastic family, legends in the motorsports industry. Connie Coletta going back 60 plus years in drag racing. And I went up there to be the bourbon host for the gala. Apparently several members of the board are big bourbon fans, and they invited me up to kind of host. And at the event, I hosted a VIP bourbon bar. We poured a couple harder to get bottles, had a great time meeting people. And then I was the focus of the evening and led everyone through one of our Bourbon 101 in the blind tastings, about 175 people. Absolutely fantastic.
Did the kids enjoy the bourbon?
They did. They smelled it. There's just a few there, but we had to make sure we had a note on the stage because a young gentleman, I think he's about 15 years old, did a fantastic job as the MC. He's actually one of the kids in the program, and he came up and he commanded the stage, but he's right in front of my bourbon. I looked at him and I was like, now make sure you don't drink that. And he's like, oh, I don't want that, sir.
Oh, come on. Let the kid have a drink. It's all right.
That's in the future. They got to be a little bit older in the program to be taken to the distillery tour.
He's not driving anywhere.
No, that's true. Now, Bob, I have to tell you about this event though, because I've attended a lot of galas. You've been involved with a lot of galas before, but this is probably one of the most unique things I've ever been to. Now, first of all, obviously a great cause, one that we were really, really proud to be associated with, but the woman that organized this, and I got to give a shout out to Cassie Sleeper. She organized this event. She works for the organization. But since Coletta Motorsports and Coletta Air is one of their major sponsors, Coletta donated use of one of their hangars. And so the event was set up in the hangar and it had an air flight theme for the whole event, right? So the whole thing was Adventure Take Flight is the theme of the event. And in the hangar, not only did the tables set up, they had the big stage, all the lights, but they actually had an airplane in there that everybody could kind of check out and tour. They had they had a little mini dragster for the kids. They had a funny car in there from Coletta Motorsports as well. The VIPs who arrived early had the opportunity to go in and fly one of the professional flight simulators that Coletta Air runs for their clients. So people there would go in and fly a 747 while drinking bourbon. Which is
I was
usually
going to say, because nothing says let's fly a big-ass plane like drinking a bunch of whiskey.
Right.
I would not want to be on the cleanup crew over there.
So that was pretty cool. I didn't get to do that, but I heard it was absolutely amazing because these are those, fully immersed flight simulators where you're in there, the whole thing pitches and yaws. It's all in hydraulics with the wraparound screens. So that was pretty cool. But where it really, really got interesting was everything from the decorations down to the items on the table were airplane themed. So when you sat down at your table, you had a box of snacks like you would get on an airplane. You had a little suitcase, a mini suitcase that had coffee beans in there to help cleanse your palate and your nose between different samples of bourbon. And that was provided by Gearhead Coffee, which is making some fantastic coffee, by the way.
If I'm at an event like this, raising a bunch of money at a gala, and I'm paying that, I don't want a little bag of peanuts like I get on an airplane at my table. Y'all got to come up now.
Now there was
y'all got to come up.
There was tons of stuff in there, and they did serve dinner and they had food, so no slight there. And the food, some of the best food I've ever had at a mass event. And I didn't eat until well after the show was over, and they brought me out a plate of food. It's still hot, fresh, and delicious. But what was really cool is because it was an airplane themed, everyone except for me was dressed as like a flight attendant or steward or stewardess. And when it was time for the bourbon tasting, as I was taking the stage and kicking things off, they were rolling around beverage carts to every table. And they gave everybody a little box. And in the box were 4 whiskey samples in airplane bottles with custom labels. So it was just like you were being served from the beverage cart. And then as we went through the tastings, people would pour the sample into their glass. That was very, very cool. But I think
you had more things available than Woodford and Jim Beam, right?
Yes,
like
we
you would
did.
typically have on any flight.
Yes, we did. Yes, people were allowed to drink their own if they brought it, but no one did. So we were a little bit more open to that. But the highlight, and I think the thing that you're going to love is, it turns out that one of the board members and one of the big bourbon lovers is a family member and works at a family member of the family that created and started and runs White Castles, and he organized something kind of special. So after the event was over, they opened up the hangar bay doors and a luggage tram came in, right, pulling the cart behind it. And when they opened it, it was filled with what looked like fake suitcases that were filled with some swag, including a bottle of their Maker's Mark private selection that we featured in the tasting. But even better than that, sitting on top of those suitcases were tons and tons of crave cases from White Castles.
That's what I'm talking about right there. That's what you need right there. You know, White Castle is a key and central partner of the bourbon industry, because what else is going to get you through to the next morning after a night of drinking and ensure that you don't have any kind of hangover or anything going on and that you sleep well than White Castle? I mean, I have been a fan of White Castle burgers since I was a small child. I was never a small child, since I was a child.
Young child.
You know, young child. Yes, young child. I mean, I've had White Castles many a time. My brother loves to tell the story that I came when we were living together back just out of college, and I came home with some White Castles and was eating them, and then I went to sleep. He came down the next morning, and he sits down in a recliner, and he puts his hand behind his head. He said, "What the hell is this?" And he's something on a chair on the headrest, and apparently I had fallen asleep with a White Castle in my hand up above my head and just relaxed there, and that White Castle cheese got a little bit of essence on the chair there, and that's what my brother was feeling. So
nice.
White Castle, it's good on anything, folks.
Oh, man, it was the perfect way to end the evening. Of course, afterwards, everyone went back to the hotel and hit the bar. So I think I crawled into bed around 1:30. I was on my feet from 4 until 1:30. So it was a fantastic night.
Did they tent the hotel the next morning?
No, I was actually staying in a different hotel. So after the after party in the lobby, I went to my hotel and slept in a nice surrounding. Let's just call it that.
Because the one thing you got to do,
where you're going.
Yeah, if you're gonna do that, just be prepared. That's why I always have Gas X by the nightstand there and Beano out in the front. So just be sure, like you have to drink from the right glass and the proper glass, that you have your proper accessories if you're going to indulge in White Castle.
That's right. Well, it was a great event, a lot of money raised for a fabulous organization, and a real good sense of community. Speaking of community, though, I also, while I was there, had a chance to meet in person one of the Drink Curious community members, a guy by the name of Bob Bruner. He's been involved heavily in our group, very active. He even helped us pick our recent virtual barrel pick of KO Distilling whiskey, but got to meet him up in person and hang out for a couple hours. It's really, really cool to meet him. He also gifted us a whole bunch of samples for our craft shoot. So we may do something kind of special for the December podcast around the craft shoot. So stay tuned for that, but great to meet him. And he also shared with me that he was getting his wife in the bourbon. And by the time I got back to St. Louis, she had also joined the Drink Curious community as well. So want to thank both of them for being involved. But if you have not joined the Drink Curious community yet, what the hell are you waiting for? I mean, Bob's got a list, and if your name is not on the list, bad things may just happen.
That's right, and I'm getting ready to put the suit on this season, so
that's right.
You better watch your ass.
Santa's coming for you, folks, and he's going to be more like Krampus than the gifting Santa.
That's right. Banter doesn't take any shit. You heard bad Santa. Well, I was paid handsomely for the rights to that.
That's right. But in the community, we had a couple interesting conversations that happened recently that I thought I'd share with folks to maybe get you excited about joining. One was someone posted that he's waiting long enough to post this, but he said, Dickel Bonded is a way better value than Knob Creek 15-year-old. And that stirred up quite a interesting sense of opinions, and you don't hear a lot of people pontificating on the positive values of Dickel. Now, he did throw out in the little carve out that obviously you have to get past the Flintstone vitamin thing. But if you don't mind that was the gauntlet that he threw down. So I appreciate him for being bold. We got into heated conversations about what is the best age for a bourbon, right? We all know that our point of view is older is not necessarily better. and young is too young. So what is the perfect age? And then the other thing was a gentleman did some deep dive, quick math analysis on what is the true cost of a single barrel. And do you get a better value with a single barrel if you're buying an established brand or a craft brand? And what are the economics that go into that? So if these are the types of things you'd like to know more about, or when I ask a question to a community that's going to be supportive and chime right in and try to sort through the difficult landscape of bourbon and whiskey in this current day and age, we invite you to join. And obviously we do a lot of other things with virtual tastings and blind tastings and get-togethers. So we definitely would love to have you in there.
Now, I have been running crazy with my day job, as has Pops, with everything going on with Drink Curious and Bourbon and Banter. But so I didn't monitor the age for a bourbon conversation. But Pops, I'm curious, what is your take? What is your preferred age for bourbon?
I'm a traditionalist. I kind of sit back there with some of the old school master distillers. And, for a bourbon to typically be in the spot that I enjoy, I get a wide range. It's going to be, 6 to 12 is kind of the full expansive range, but I would say the majority of what I like is going to be in the 6 to 8 year range overall. You have to have enough time in the barrel for the water to really pull out the vanilla and the caramel flavors that we enjoy as the base of a good bourbon. So if it's too young, you're not going to get enough extraction. So you need some time in there. And obviously when you start getting older and start getting past the 8 to 10 year mark, you can have some really cool things happen with the oak extraction and the tannins that come into play. But as you get older, that can really, really overpower whiskey and take it across that line of no return for my palate. So there are some bourbons that are older that I enjoy. But by and large, the older ones, they're not really hitting the sweet spot because I don't like a lot of that oak and tannic flavor that comes from a hyper-aged bourbon.
And I'm on the back end of that. I'm 8 to 10 years.
Okay. Perfect.
Pretty much. We've had stuff. And, depending upon the distillery, too, like the folks at MGP make great stuff under 7 years old. Barrel proof MGP under 7, between 5 to 7 years old, I've had some phenomenal barrels. Four Roses barrels, I tend to prefer right around that 9 years, 8 to 10 years, 9 years. But, for the most part, past 10, it's all right. You can go ahead and pay the premium for that, but I'm fine with stuff younger than that. It works out for me.
Hey, I just got to try when I was in Louisville a pour of the Knob Creek 18, and it's expensive, so that's a whole different conversation. But far as a drinking, I would drink it. It's not too much, but it's definitely getting close. They did a good job of balancing the oak influence, but once again, it's not what I seek out. And once again, this is what's so fun about it is people are going to find what they like. A little bit later, I'm going to do a quick on-air tasting of a 14-year-old, kind of see where that nets out. But, yeah.
A 14-year-old bourbon.
14-year-old bourbon.
Yes. You got to clarify, man. We don't want to get sued. Shit. I don't have bail money. So, it's funny you say that about the Knob Creek.
What's wrong with eating a 14-year-old cheese?
Stop it. I don't want that, I don't need all the fucking mold and shit on my cheese. But I had a friend who's actually in the Drink Curious community. My buddy Bennett Wood, he gave me a blind sample of the Knob 12. He gave me the Jack Bonded and says, you really got to try this. And it was good. And he gave me the Knob 12 as a control sample is what he said. And I tried it and I'm tasting it and I'm getting a bunch of Dickel notes off of it. And when he told me it was Knob 12, I said, there's no way in hell I would have ever guessed that. Now I've had a 14-year-old barrel of Knob here for a while that, was nothing like that 12-year-old. And to me, that tasted like no other Knob Creek that I'd ever had. So, it's the age, getting past 10 years, that just didn't do it for me.
Right. Well, folks, if this is the type of conversation and discussions you want to be involved in, definitely consider joining the Drink Curious community. And by the time you are listening to this, we will have launched a brand new Drink Curious website. So go to drinkcurious.com and you'll find that website. But what you're looking for specifically is the menu item called community. Click on that. You can learn all about the community and there'll be links for you to sign up. And we hope to see you there because we have a ton of single barrels coming. This has been a challenging year. We've picked a lot of barrels, but the distilleries are just unfortunately dragging their feet in terms of getting these things bottled, getting the glass in, getting them shipped. So we're hoping a lot of these are going to come in, making for great holiday gifts. But some of the ones that should be coming soon, and once again, coming soon is out of our control, but we've got a great pick from French Lick Spirits. Spirit is French Licks, I should say. We've got a one-of-a-kind Breckenridge cast strength bourbon coming in, an amazing Wyoming whiskey single barrel as well. We did a Maker's Mark private selection and a Knob Creek pick, and a very, very unique MGP rye that we selected from Traverse City Distilling Company back in August. So we're looking forward to those coming in. So if you're looking for some single barrel picks, looking for ways to gift, and we'll talk a little bit more about gifting in the Bourbon Bullshit segment, consider joining Drink Curious. And remember, we can ship these nationwide, and we sell these below retail to community members. We make no money on the sales of these barrels, so we hopeful that you will partake of this opportunity and unique way to get some great barrel picks in your collection before the end of the year.
And everybody's battling glass shortages and bottle shortages, and that is not just for private barrels. That's for everything. That's for every kind of expression. So, it's not only out of our hands. Sometimes it's out of the distillery's hands as well. So we're all trying to get caught up. But I'm looking forward to those. Looking forward to those things, especially that Wyoming pick.
That's a long time coming, brother.
It's been a long time coming. I know we've talked about it many times, but folks, it's a really unique single barrel Wyoming whiskey. I'm looking forward to all those. That one in particular, though, absolutely.
All right. Well, Bob, how about we dive into some whiskey news?
There's a whole bunch happening in the wonderful world of whiskey, so let's go to the whiskey news.
All right, so last podcast episode, we talked about how we were going to be doing the official podcast tent at the Bourbon and Barbecue Louisville event. It was the inaugural year for that event, scheduled for, today. We're recording this on Saturday, November the 12th, and we were supposed to be down there doing a podcast tent. Unfortunately, due to some unforeseen situations, challenges, they had to postpone. So it's going to be rescheduled for sometime in the spring, which is probably good because it'd be a cold day to sit outside doing podcasts and drinking bourbon and whatnot. So in the spring, we'll have some nicer weather, but looking forward to being a part of that when it gets rescheduled. There's a great lineup that was set up for that, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So now you have a little bit more advanced warning. All right. Hopefully, maybe we'll be able to give out even more free tickets since we got some more time. So stay tuned for that. And once again, now you can train, right? You can train your belly. You can get it ready to stretch. So when you get there, you can have a ton of barbecue and some bourbon to wash it down, but really a lot of barbecue.
I didn't want to mention this, but I do know they did have some issues. But the real reason that this was postponed is I kind of went on a bender, and I got in a car last week. And I went to all of the barbecue vendors that were going to be there. And, Pops can see, you all can't see me here, but I've put on actually 150 pounds since the last podcast. So I ate all of the barbecue that they were going to be bringing down there, and they just could not get the meat to do it anymore. So I apologize, a little gassy here today. So, just be careful. But yeah, I ate all the ribs and all the pulled pork and all of the brisket. I did have some vegetables. I had a little potato salad with it, but I apologize for eating so much that we had to postpone this.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I was wondering why you were wearing a Lakers onesie.
Well, man, it's the onesie is the official clothing item of winter. For me, at least, because, when the winter comes, like we were talking about earlier, comes all the holiday desserts and all the holiday food and all those kind of things. So we increase our bourbon intake, we increase our food intake. The onesie allows me to remain my svelte, girlish figure, and not really, everybody can't tell if there's a little, a few extra 100 pounds here and there, Now the figure is girlish. It's an entire girls soccer team, but, it is girlish.
Well, see, folks, Bourbon and Banter, Drink Curious, Fashion Forward. these things just go together. So thank you, Bob, for that. And let's talk about probably the biggest news that's happened in the last couple of weeks, and that's the news that Campari was buying a 70% share of Wilderness Trail Distillery for, I don't know, just a little bit of money, $420 million to be exact. Holy shit!
Almost half $500 million for 70% of a distillery that started when? They haven't even been there 10 years, right?
No, I don't believe so. I don't know the date exactly off my head, but this is a huge deal and couldn't happen to some nicer folks. Pat and Shane have built a fantastic facility down there in Kentucky and have a great reputation for not only making good products, but also being really good people in the industry. And what makes this really exciting is the fact that they are the owners. They own it, the two of them. There's no debt. There's no banks that had financing. These are two guys who built this up, taking money from their other business, and scraping by, driving cars into the ground, self-financing, putting in the sweat and the tears for a huge payday, which obviously with another 30% at play could net them a couple $100 million more potentially as well, depending on the future of the business.
Then allow us to use this opportunity to make sure they're aware that the Drink Curious community and Bourbon and Banter are a certified 501c3. And we welcome any and all donations that you all may be wanting to send our way, and we promise to put it to good use in developing the palate of America.
There you go. Well, the last thing I want to say about this is anytime a company gets bought, the first thing that people say is, well, God, now they're going to come in and screw it up. We have been told by Pat that they're going to stay in control of the day-to-day and what they're doing at the business. So hopefully that means there won't be a lot of change. Now, the buyout exercise option for the remaining 30% is a call put option that's exercisable in 2031. All right. And so we imagine that their control and their vision will be in place at least until then. Once that happens, all bets are off. But if you've been a fan of what they've been putting out, whether through their own brands or people that they're distilling for in contract, keep an eye on them, keep stocking up, keep helping them out. Let's maximize the money because hopefully they will take that money and do something else that's going to be very cool and of interest to all of us bourbon lovers.
And that's what I was going to say. You might want to grab a couple bottles because, you know, with an owner like Campari as part of this now, you can bet that the price might start ticking up. They want to make that return investment. So
yeah,
grab some stuff because Wilderness Trail stuff it's all still under $60 a bottle.
Oh, you know they've let Wild Turkey do their thing, but they're getting their hands in and fucking with pricing and marketing.
Exactly, the pricing that's exactly where I was going with this. Wild Turkey stuff is now going to $250 for stuff that we could buy for $50.
Right, the Russell stuff.
3 years ago at the Russell's, Russell's Reserve single barrel was $55. Now a single Rick House is $200 or $250, and
$250.
Yeah. So you can better believe that there are prices and prices will go up. But if it starts doubling and tripling, you might want to grab some of your favorite stuff right now while you can get it for under $60.
Well, and since Diageo hasn't had a original thought in their mind when it comes to American whiskey. On the heels of Campari buying Wilderness Trail, news broke that Diageo was acquiring Balcones Distilling in Texas. I know, Bob, you have an opinion on that.
Well, they say, sometimes 1 + 1 = 3. Well, bullshit plus bullshit equals massive shit. That is applicable here. So, Diageo, who is one of our favorite people to offer commentary on, because, if you wonder about somebody fucking something up, you can just look at Diageo. And Texas whiskey, as those who have listened to us previously know, holds a very special place in our heart, right near the rear end of the heart where the gas expunges from. That's where the Texas whiskey's at. So, I don't know what to think about any of this. I mean, we've tried Balcones stuff. I couldn't even give it to my dogs, but Not that I'm giving whiskey to my dogs. It's a joke, folks. Just fucking relax.
You give it to all your dogs, not just one.
Super, super premium whiskey, Texas American single malt. Come on, man.
Well, I mean, regardless of what you think about Texas, and, they've been known to do some very interesting things. A lot of people think that the company lost its heart and soul when Chip Tate got pushed out years ago and that whole fiasco. But the bottom line is these acquisitions are continuing to happen. I think we're going to see more of those as some of these distilleries continue to mature and age. But obviously there's some other, there continues this influx of distilleries being announced. We'll hit on a few. But there's also changes going on at distilleries in other ways. So, for example, we talked about before Jackie Zykan leaving, started hitting Barton. She left Old Forester. Now they've brought in Melissa Rift as the new brand ambassador and master taster. Louisville natives coming in, and they say, quote unquote, it's going to help continue the revitalization of Old Forester. And I've got a tip for these guys, and I'm going to channel my inner Steve Coombs and say, if you want to revitalize Old Forester, because quite frankly, it's the best bourbon in your portfolio, take all that marketing budget away from Woodford and put it behind this brand. And this is the horse that you want backing, because, Woodford, big meh from me. Old Forester's the horse to pick.
And focus on some things with Old Forester. You've got all these different expressions and more new expressions. No, just calm down and focus on 1920. You've got the Whiskey Row series there. Everybody buys the 1920. Some folks buy the 1910. I don't know that anybody buys the other two, or not much at least. Going back though a little bit, Pops, where you were saying, they've been doing some interesting things at Balcones. Different does not mean interesting. So the end product, if it tastes like shit, it's not interesting. It's a waste of time and money.
Well, actually, you're technically wrong, Bob, because everyone knows that when a self-proclaimed whiskey aficionado goes to a distillery, when you're served something and they pour it in your glass and they ask you what you think, when you can't think of anything nice to say, everyone says, wow, this is interesting. So technically speaking, interesting kind of says it all.
I don't say that.
Yeah.
When they pour it for me,
that's why you're barred.
And it tastes like something. I say, well, this is shit. What else you got? Or I say, you know what? I'd like to taste this in 2 or 3 years when you put more, in it. They got their baby blue whiskey. It's more like baby shit, but anyway.
This is why the podcast hasn't hit the road yet. Bob is
hey,
barred.
Goddamn. You know something? No, you know something? If you're going to be, one thing people tell me all the time, hey, at least I never have to wonder where I stand with you. No, you don't. Because if you can't be honest about shit, why even fucking bother? But anyway, moving back to the Old Forester thing, yes, Old Forester, I'll talk about this a little later when we get into the bourbon bullshit thing. I've got a story.
You're holding back. I see you, man. You're sweating.
That actually involves Old Forester. No, it's a positive for Old Forester.
Okay. All right.
But, the Old Forester brand has some good things. But they've got a lot of stuff. There's a ton of stuff that has got the Old Forester brand on it. And, if they're making that much whiskey, then, maybe they could do something a little bit more worthwhile with most of it.
Well, there you go.
At least for me.
Well, I know how much you love a good celebrity news story. So this next one is going to be perfect. Bear Fight American Single Malt Whiskey announced recently a partnership with Seth MacFarlane. If you can believe that. He's a brand stakeholder. And so in addition to his equity stake in the brand, he's going to serve as their chief storyteller, establishing, quote unquote, the brand's unique voice and emulating Bear Fight's disruptive yet approachable spirit through creative pieces as the brand expands its launch after its initial release this past May.
Now, if anybody can provide a unique voice to something, it's going to be Seth MacFarlane.
That's right. It's
going to be some stuff. I've always, Stewie's Bourbon, I would take a look at that.
Yeah.
In fact, that would be a fantastic episode of Family Guy if they would just have Stewie serve as a bourbon judge or taster at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. I would love to see that.
Well, they're already off to a good start in two ways with this partnership. One is it's not like he went out and said, I want to start a whiskey company. So it's not like a lot of these other celebrities out there. And he's also bringing his trademark sense of humor, because in the press release was a great quote attributed to him that says, there's a lot of whiskeys out there. So for me to put my name on it, it's either great or I'm getting paid a ton of money. And then he goes on, well, they're paying me almost nothing, which means Bear Fight is damn good whiskey. I don't always stare off to the left side of a photo at something off camera while holding a bottle, but when I do, that bottle is Bear Fight whiskey, because the photo is such a traditional whiskey douchebag photo, which is fantastic. Now, I have a sample in front of me. I took them up on their offer. Now, this is American single malt, so it's not bourbon, so this is going to be a little bit different. And I'm still easing my way into that category, and it's been challenging for me to find a single malt that I'm really happy with. I had one at Toledo Spirits Company a while back that had a good amount of age on it, which I appreciated. I had some of the dark art stuff from Breckenridge. It's got a good age on it. So for me, the problem with most American single malts is they're too young. So this is going to be interesting. So let me go ahead and give this one a quick taste, Bob. And if I die...
While he's nosing and tasting this, it's aged for at least 3 years in first fill bourbon barrels and finished in peated smoked oak and sherry casks. So there's a little bit of a nip of a nod to Scotch here. So what are you getting on that nose, Pops?
The nose was a little off-putting at first, because once again it's a little bit different. Smells a little young, but I get some of the sherry notes coming through. I don't get a tremendous amount of the smoke, but there's a weird sweetness on it that I can't quite place. This is my first drink of the morning, so this is kind of interesting. But on the palate, wow, it's actually quite decent. I am not hit in the face at all with that super young malt forward flavor profile that so many American single malts bring to the table and kind of beat you over the head with it. This is much more nuanced. A lot of that bourbon barrel flavors coming through on it. Wow, that's actually not bad. You could pour me a glass of that, and if I didn't smell it first, I probably just think it was some sort of finished bourbon. Just like if I wasn't paying attention, I could sneak through until I really start paying attention on it. So that's actually not bad at 3 years. I'm impressed.
Okay, and it's accessible. It's $40 a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
That's the MSRP. And it's available in a handful of states. You can go to Bear Fight Whiskey, check that out. But I'm thinking about the other celebrity bourbons that have been put out at that price point. The washed up quarterback Bradshaw. You've got some country asshole redneck Riviera bullshit, whatever that. I forget who it is.
John Rich.
But yeah, Rich.
Mm-hmm.
And so this looks like it would be a leader in the category if you're going to do a celebrity whiskey, and at least it's from somebody who's a great bullshitter but is not full of shit. There's a big difference, folks.
I'll tell you.
Maybe this is something to take a look at.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been curious about American single malts, I would wholeheartedly endorse starting here. I don't know enough about it yet. I'm going to throw this into the community, see what people think about it. David Levine, who's one of our community members, did a great article for us recently about the standard and the future of American single malts. Be curious to get his view on this one, but this is definitely drinkable, and very much looking forward to see where this goes with a little bit more age, and very curious to see how Seth MacFarlane story tells around this brand. And hey, Bob, maybe we should reach out and see if we can get him on a podcast.
If you send him some of our bullshit, I bet you he would come on here. Right. I think Seth would be an outstanding candidate for a guest on Bourbon Bullshit.
You and I could sit back. You could just do all the voices. We don't have to do shit.
There you go.
There you go. All right. Well, moving on. We mentioned Traverse City earlier. They've just announced a major expansion and new headquarters, which they had kind of given us a sneak peek of the news, but they're putting $20 million into a new building facility up there. So that's fantastic to see them growing. And then obviously that will allow them to build larger production facilities and really go full bore of distilling their own products. So we'll be curious to see where that evolves to in the next 4 to 6 years. But congratulations to Chris and the team out there. The one that's got me really excited is, I don't know if you remember, Bob, but Green River Bourbon, which came out earlier this year, has been my favorite release of the year. Master distiller Jacob Call created that, put that market out. Then came the news that Bardstown Bourbon Company bought Green River. The next day, Jacob Call announced he was leaving. So where was he going? Well, we finally found out recently that he is going to be one of the two people creating the Western Kentucky Distilling Company, and they're breaking ground on a $30 million distillery in Beaver Dam, Kentucky. So once again, we're going to have to wait a couple of years to see what they produce, but he obviously did a great job with Green River. His family has a long-standing history in distilling. His dad is the master blender for Papa Pilar's down in Florida, doing fantastic work with that brand as well. Now, they're going to start with a focus on contract distilling because obviously that's where the money's at. But obviously they'll be releasing their own brands on the heels of that as well. So we want to reach Jacob and his partners all the best luck in getting that produced. But I'm rooting for them because we need more good, affordable, and accessible bourbon and not just this release after release that source, tons of markup, hard to get, and, well, overpriced.
Damn straight.
And that is the perfect segue for, well, the new release whiskey news. All right, so we're going to kick off these whiskey news updates. There's been a shit ton of releases, so we're not going to cover everything, but simply our podcast is long enough as it is. But I want to start real quick with revisiting. Last podcast, we talked about Widow Jane Distillery releasing the Vaults 2022, and this was the fourth chapter in a seasonally released collection of old and rare whiskeys. So they released a bourbon that is aged 14 years, and they sent me a sample, and I said if I got it, we'd follow up. This is a blend of straight bourbon whiskeys from Indiana and Tennessee. I know, shocking, right? Who knew?
Yeah, how about
who
that?
knew there was still bourbon left?
Who would have thunk they would have bought it from Indiana and Tennessee?
Now, this is 99 proof, and the SRP on this is $250. So that's some steep coin for a blend. So, nice dark color. Lots of wood on the nose, no surprise. This one is 14 years old, if I didn't already say that. And this is from batch number 1, bottle 1806. So lots of wood on the nose. I mean, a lot of wood, like varnished wood paneling wood on the nose. Get some sweet cherry notes behind it, some vanilla caramel, all your traditional flavors, but that wood really is overpowering everything. Bob, would you be surprised if I told you that the first thing I tasted was wood?
Not at all. You're telling me it tastes like it was aged in a 1970s basement, then, with that wood paneling, that knotty pine paneling or whatever. Yeah.
Lots of wood on this one, folks. Way more than I would expect at 14 years old. And it's kind of the over-dominating flavor note that I get from this. It's got a nice sweetness after that, but it's a little flat in the sense that I don't get a tremendous amount of complexity. There's not layers of different flavors interrupting and evolving as we go through the palate. Now, once again, I just opened this bottle this morning, so I'm going to give it a little time before I pass final judgment. But for me, it's a lot of panel licking. And for $250, I can probably go find a used Econoline van somewhere, and it's got paneling in it, and get off a little bit cheaper.
Probably so. Got 375,000 miles on it. You can get it for $199.
There you go. So once again, first impressions, definitely not living up to $250 a bottle. But we'll give it some time, open it up a little bit, and see where it goes. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about real quick with Widow Jane is that their master distiller, Lisa Wicker, who, over the last 5 years has done a good job of kind of reinvigorating the brand and bringing some of their products, reformulating them to great effect. In fact, we revisited one of their bottles recently with Brent Joseph reviewing it, and it was much improved. She has announced that she's actually leaving, and she's going to be going back to Kentucky somewhere. We don't know where yet, so the speculation game is afoot. We're not sure if she could wind up somewhere like Maker's Mark, who obviously lost their master distiller and their master blender. And There's been some debate on will Maker's Mark actually create and replace a master distiller position, or will they create something new that's different? Because at the end of the day, Maker's Mark technically only makes one bourbon, right? That's all they make. They don't want to make anything else. In fact, their whole existence is about making sure that every barrel tastes like the previous barrel. That's why they don't do a true single barrel program, because that would defeat the purpose of why they exist. That's why they did Maker's 46. That's why they do the private selection the way they do, because the initial base spirit all tastes the same. So do you really need a master distiller? Maybe just a head distiller, and create a new like master blender ambassador role perhaps that Lisa could step into.
So she was the master distiller at Widow Jane. How do you have a master distiller if you don't make any whiskey?
Well, maybe they're making it. It just hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, but they would have told us about that, and that hasn't.
Well, maybe not. I don't follow the brand that closely.
Master blender, perhaps, but master distiller. She's not going to Indiana and Kentucky or Tennessee and distilling there and then going back home. Come on now.
Well, what I have recently
don't try to bullshit a bullshitter now, folks.
Well, I can tell you, Bob, in some of my recent travels, I've had some interesting conversations that I can't kind of divulge all the information. But what I've been learning slowly over time is that if a master distiller has spent their entire life at a brand and grown up around a brand and gone from, taking an entry-level job and working up, that doesn't necessarily translate to the ability to go somewhere else and be a great master distiller, right? Because you're in a system that's supported you. You haven't had to deal with a bunch of changes. You haven't had to create anything new. So we're starting to see slowly these people, look at Denny Potter moving from Maker's Mark. He moves about every 5 years. Here's a guy who moves around, learns new things, has a lot to bring to the table. So what his new enterprise with the new distillery he's going to be creating, that's going to be really fun to see. But if you take someone who spent their whole life, how good are they really, right? Once again, I'm not trying to point any fingers, but it's a unique thing that doesn't get talked about, is if you're in an ecosystem that you have plenty of support, you don't change things, you don't challenge things, how adept are you really at creating something new and dealing with all those struggles? So just some food for thought, maybe a great discussion point in the Drink Curious community. But wherever Lisa goes, we wish her well. I'm excited to see what's next for her. And, obviously also interested to see what Maker's Mark is going to do as they move forward into the future, knowing that they're really focused on creating the same product day in, day out, and letting people enjoy that, which is a different model than most distilleries.
Well, I didn't share this with you, Pops, but I'll tell the community now. I've been given the okay, but I actually had to turn down the master blender position at Maker's Mark. They could not accommodate the donut requirement. So they said, look, man, we'll do all this, but we're not bringing in 3 dozen donuts every 6 hours for you. We just can't do that. So they said they worried that the health insurance would be too expensive for me, so I had to pass on that. But it was an opportunity there I almost took.
Well, I would miss you, but I'm glad because we make some great donuts in St. Louis, and I hope that's enough to keep you here for a long time.
Well, I had a whole idea, the Maker's Mark donut bottle. It was I was going to buy all of the. What you don't know is the Wild Turkey with the donut bottle that they had 25 years. There's a bunch of those left in a warehouse in the back of Stitzel Weller, behind where the orphan barrels are at. And I was going to take those down there and make a donut bourbon.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of stylistic choices, donut bottles, whatever, Blue Run Spirits unveiled their first micro batch whiskey releases recently with their Blue Run Flight series. Now, once again, this is going to be whiskey that's been distilled by Jim Rutledge under contract for them. So great base product there with some interesting blended. And what I like about this is these micro batches are, according to the press release, their response to somewhat meaningless term small batch, which I love because I always talk about how meaningless that term is in our blind tastings. And so they're using these micro batches, which are just a couple, I think it's like 2 to 5 barrels. So it really gives the blender, in this case, a chance to show what they can do, because you can't hide behind, if a Jim Beam small batch is a couple hundred barrels, that really still is blending out all the variables, right? It's making something very consistent. So this is an interesting series. We have a review on our site of one of the releases. Frank Dobbin did a great review of one of those. But these are being released annually beginning in 2023. And you can pick up these bottles for about $119. So once again, it's above that $100 price point, which I have an issue with. But so far, all of the blends that I've had from them to date have been pretty solid. So at least the product is tasty. So New Riff is channeling their inner Nick Cannon by continuing to pump out new releases at a breathtaking pace.
Yeah, but the difference is that there's actually talent behind what's pumping out shit at New Riff as opposed to Nick Cannon, who I don't know. I have yet to
Is he famous for anything other than being married to Mariah Carey?
Being a pain in the ass?
Yeah, well, there you go. Anyway, they've released a couple new things. One is a T50 Crystal Malt Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. 100 proof, and then the other one is a Kentucky-grown Aroostook malted rye whiskey. Once again, also at 100 proof. Now, once again, some of these are available only through their whiskey club, but both of them are priced under $60 at $59.99. So if you're a New Riff fan and you like how they're kind of exploring the malted rye space, give these two a closer look and let us know what you think about these products. Bob, I could take you back to Old Forester one more time. They announced that on November 1st, they were releasing the first bottled and bond bourbon called King Ranch. This is a partnership with the King Ranch out of Texas. So this is a Texas-only release, bottled at 105 proof from a proprietary batch of Old Forester bourbon using heavily charred barrels. What do you think about that?
Well, I saw King Ranch. I expected it to be partnered with Hidden Valley. I thought there was going to be, some kind of various spices and shit on the finish there, but it's finished through King Ranch mesquite charcoal, created from trees harvested from the ranch. Yeah, because Long Branch was so successful in bringing in that bullshit mesquite into bourbon. So at least it's only $70, but I mean, my buddy Matt has got the best line about that is with the mesquite and the wild turkey. He says, yeah, Matthew McConaughey took some Texas mesquite wood and took a shit in a bottle of wild turkey. Ooh. So I'm wondering if this is going to be just as bad.
Well, I tell you what, a couple things surprised me about this. Well, to your point, one is, didn't we already see that this doesn't work, that the market doesn't want it? Number two is the King Ranch brand, when they partner, right? They've got like a King Ranch version, I think, of the Ford F-150. That's some expensive shit. So the fact that this bottle's only $70 is really kind of surprising to me. When I first got the press release, as I'm reading through, I'm expecting a $250 bottle, which may also tell you what we need to know about this product as well. But that said, I'd love to give it a shot, right? As you said, they keep throwing different things out at Old Forester, and I don't know why, because they make good whiskey. They don't need to make 900 versions of it, right?
Well, maybe that's what they're doing. They're taking all the shit that's not selling it and throwing it in the back and putting some mesquite in it and hoping it'll sell.
I'm almost wondering if they're kind of like repurposing some Cooper's Craft here.
That could be.
Or
that
maybe
could very well be.
Or King Ranch had a storm come through and they had a lot of downed trees they had to get rid of, and somebody knew a friend of a friend and they made this happen. Or maybe it's the Old Forester Statesman being rebottled. I don't know.
Just a Brown Foreman, listen to us. Make more 1920, make more Old Forester rye, and give it a fucking rest for a minute, okay?
That's right. Another release that's come out, Angel's Envy announced their 11th annual cast strength bourbon. 119.8 proof this year, just under 17,000 bottles available, and it can be yours for the low retail price of $229, which means you're going to pay a hell of a lot more if you want it. And Bob, when they first came out with this, 11 years ago, I got a bottle or two. It was expensive, not this expensive, and I enjoyed it. But this one, from a pricing perspective, continues to go up, and it's a little too steep for my taste and my pocketbook, but a lot of people are big fans of this one.
Yeah, I'm not an Angel's Envy fan, so they can keep this one.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. One more bottle in the wild for you to track down. And last, and certainly least, the news that Buffalo Trace actually is releasing the 2022 Antique Collection with George T. Stagg this year. They're not leaving it off the table this year, Bob.
Well,
get a few bottles?
That's very nice. What table are you referring to? The table in the mythical region where someone actually sees it? Because I ain't going to see this shit.
Well, even more mythical.
Neither are you.
Right. Even the more mythical is the suggested retail pricing of $99 per bottle.
I want somebody who gets this for $99 to email us at podcast@bourbonbanter.com and let us know, and we will I want to know anybody who gets this for retail. I'm curious if there's anybody out there that actually does.
Well, I don't know. We will see. Probably no one that listens to us. So anyway, enough time spent on Buffalo Trace. Instead, Bob, I want to take a moment and talk about the sponsors of this episode of our podcast, and that would be our good friends at KO Distilling. You know, we've talked about KO Distilling before, Virginia-based in Manassas. The distillery now is going on their 7th year of crafting some delicious award-winning bourbons and rye whiskeys. And we recently just did a virtual barrel pick. We're sad we couldn't get out there in person, but we brought together members of our Drink Curious community and picked what we think is going to be an amazing barrel of whiskey. They're doing things a lot different than a lot of people in terms of how they are distilling their own products, how they're sourcing whiskey, and how they're bringing some really exciting versions to the market. So if you haven't been out there yet and you're in the Virginia, D.C. area, definitely check them out in Manassas. It was founded by classmates Bill and John. They actually worked together and went to school together at the United States Merchant Marine Academy. And then they went on to very successful careers and decided to get back together to create the distillery. And their ethos and their hard work have really paid off. They've got a fantastic team out there putting out great products. And we want everyone to go there and tell them that Bourbon and Banter sent you. You will not be disappointed in spending some time with them and trying their complete line of whiskeys. And if you want to learn more, go to our website and look up KO Distilling. We've got a virtual tour. We've got some cocktails we did for them. Do a little research in advance of your trip. You're going to have an absolutely fantastic time spending time with the folks there at KO Distilling.
And their stuff is available outside of Virginia now. They've got a lot of nationwide distribution. You can check them out at kodistilling.com and find out more. /banter. You'll get there through us. But you all know how we tend to rail on craft distilleries. But when there's a craft distillery that's doing things right, we absolutely want to embrace that. And they're making some fantastic products. And they're holding on to things until it's the right time, as opposed to a lot of craft distilleries. We understand cash flow issues, but they're wanting to get stuff out there quickly so they can try to get a return on that investment. And Bill and John and the team at KO held on to some stuff, and they waited to release a Distiller's Reserve bottled in bond bourbon in 4 years, and they as well as a rye. So they've got bottled in bond bourbons and ryes that are distilled on site, and they've got a fantastic 6-year-old bare knuckle high rye bourbon, which is available both in cask strength and a 90 proof bottle. They're all highly decorated, but even more than that, we're telling you this stuff is fantastic. And they're doing some really interesting things out there, Bob. So I was actually talking to Peter Mowry last week, the marketing director down at KO, and he let me in on a little something that we're going to break for you here. That and ironically enough, close just in time for the holidays. They're going to be doing a special holiday release centered around one of our favorite things, and that's fruitcake. Bourbon is frequently used in making fruitcakes, so is brandy, but I don't know that fruitcake has ever been used in making bourbon. I haven't seen it. So they love the holidays down there at KO, and Bill Carlson, one of the owners, as we've mentioned, his family had a fruitcake recipe that they've been bringing in around the holidays. And Peter was saying, he had the idea because he thought the sweetness of this fruitcake, which was doubled by the addition of the pawpaw fruit. They have which is like a national, or not a national, but a statewide fruit, the official fruit of Virginia, this pawpaw. And they put that candied pawpaw in the fruitcake, and Peter thought that with the high rye bare knuckle, it would pair really well. He said they had a couple empty barrels in the back, and just for fun, he put some of the fruitcake in the barrel for a few weeks to see what effect the aging would have on it, and he said it was fantastic. It brought out the molasses in the cake, and that balanced the sweetness of the pawpaw. And seeing that, it made him wonder what would happen if they did the reverse, if they aged the bourbon and the fruitcake together. Now, their head distiller, Ryan Hendricks, was very skeptical going into this. He's like, food and whiskey I'm not sure about, but once he tasted it, he was sold. So the process that they did is they took the award-winning bare knuckle bourbon, and after fully maturing that, they put 20 pounds of the Carlson family fruitcake inserted into the barrel. That's 4 whole 5-pound cakes. So 20 pounds of cake, and they let it age for an additional 8 to 10 weeks. And as we mentioned, the pawpaw, that's the difference with that Virginia fruitcake, is they use that candied pawpaw, giving it a slight tropical taste. So the pawpaw is like mango, banana, pineapple. You get those kind of vibes, which you don't really get in bourbon. You don't get a tropical kind of hint with bourbon. So the fruitcake is made on the distillery grounds by Bill Carlson's cousin Beulah Carlson makes it. And so they have that long history with the Virginia fruitcake because Bill's great-grandmother was the first person to ever candy pawpaw and put them in fruitcakes. So it's an experimental batch that they tried in the winter of 2021, and Peter said that they're planning to launch a limited release in the fall of this year. So anytime now, it's only going to be available at the distillery and online from Sealbox for $75 for a 750 milliliter bottle. So this is their bare knuckle bourbon, the high rye bourbon. It's bottled at 90 proof. It is then fruitcake infused bourbon. Infused. So this should be really fantastic. I'm very curious because, to get kind of a tropical vibe off of bourbon is not something that I typically, you think of rum or things like that with it. But yeah, I'll be interested to see this. And
absolutely.
He overnighted me a taste of the fruitcake with the pawpaw in it. I know, Pops, you haven't gotten to try yours yet, but it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
That barrel-aged fruitcake. So this is going to be something very special. I look forward to tasting this when it comes out.
No, this is different. I mean, obviously, changes kind of the rules a little bit, but I'm all for kind of trying this out, and it's a limited edition. And the fact that they're not charging $150 for it,
they said in the spirit of the holidays, they want to make it accessible. They want to share their gifts with everybody else, and that's, I mean,
well, there you go.
Bill, John, Peter, all of them down there. They're good folks. They make great whiskey. This is something to look out for. All
right, folks, welcome to the Craft Shoot. This is the segment of the show where we're going to try a craft whiskey that's been bottled blind. That means we don't know what it is. So we're going to taste this, give you our quick thoughts on this whiskey, sight unseen. And then after that, we'll unveil what it is. So we're kind of rolling the dice here. So brands love us and hate us for this. But at the end of the day, we're going to be 100% honest. So, Bob, are you ready for this episode?
I guess, man. I'm smelling.
You've been smelling it already, haven't you?
I'm smelling it already, and I can tell this is made in Kentucky. The reason I can tell that is because it smells like horses. Well, glue more specifically. So
hooves, man. The nose,
yeah.
The nose.
This has got an Elmer's glue nose on it with some tongue depressors. So maybe a 3-year-old made this in art class.
Man, this smells so young, and I'm just looking at the color. I mean, it's got some coloring to it, but it is super light. Straw comes to mind that you mentioned horses.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
The nose on this is horrible.
Ooh, man.
I don't get any kind of underlying classic bourbon notes on this at all. I just get tongue depressors and glue.
Wow. All right, let's just jump to the tasting because I can't build on that.
Well, the palate's not as bad as the nose is.
It's not saying a hell of a lot.
A lot of young wood, though.
Young wood, astringent.
Yeah.
Taste of vodka.
It does taste of vodka. There's no real finish on this.
Yeah, this tastes like it barely touched a barrel.
No, this is one of those things that
antiseptic. Wow, that's horrible. Oh my God! Please, I'm done. Oh my God, that was god awful.
What is this, Pops? What are you ruining our palates with this month?
This month? Oh my goodness! I think I'm gonna have to go eat a steak or something.
I'm going back to what I was having earlier, and despite that it being 11 o'clock in the morning. A buddy of mine was in Costco and showed me a picture, and they're doing Kirkland's single barrel bourbon from 1792 for $30 for a liter.
$30 for a liter of what's the proof in that?
120 proof, 1792 distillate. This is good, man.
I'm stocking up.
$30.
I'm stocking up on that before this.
Stock up. Go get yourself a case or two. It's got Kirkland's name on it, so at least you know you can find it there.
That's right.
But anyway, what is this travesty
is
on whiskey that we just tasted?
All right. This is Black Button Distilling Double Barrel Bourbon. Double barrel. One barrel wasn't bad enough.
Were they each a quarter of a barrel or something? So we got a half a barrel influence on it? I don't know.
All right. So this is at least 2 years old. That's what it says.
Yeah. I challenge that.
84 proof, which I would have guessed it was higher. 60% corn, 20% wheat, 9% rye, 11% barley. So this is actually a 4-grain bourbon.
And 100% bullshit.
Now, what I'm going to say, Bob, is this sample is dusty, right? We've been sitting on this for a while, and I got this bottle back. I'm looking through my records here. Hold on.
Well, we've had it in the coffer for at least a couple of years.
Yeah, this was made in 2020, so I'm sure their whiskey's older now and hopefully better. But this one is really, and this is rough. And Lee Stang of the Bourbon and Banter Crew did a review on this back in January of 2021. And I'm looking at his review now that I've got that pulled up because I remembered he did it. Yeah, his notes are very gentle.
Well, Lee's a very gentle guy.
I don't know if this has gotten something that's been oxidized since it's been sitting for so long. But no, and they were selling this for $75 at the distillery.
I'll pay you $80 not to give it to me again.
Done. I'll take your money. Now I got to redo your Christmas gifts. Shit. Well, there you goes, folks. Not everyone can be a winner in the craft shoot, but I tell you what, we got so much samples given to us recently. We are toying with the idea. You'll know in about a month. Maybe we'll do a craft shoot only episode for December.
Yeah, I don't know what I did to deserve that.
All right, folks. If you have a brand you think we should include in the craft shoot, let us know. Drop a note at podcast@bourbonbanter.com. All right, folks, it's time for your favorite podcast segment in all of the world, the universe, the galaxy, and beyond. That's right. It's time for
Bourbon Bullshit.
All right, we're going to call out some of the biggest bullshitters in the industry and ridiculous practices. And here we go. We're going to, first of all, start off with something that's not really bullshit. It's really something that touched my heart, Bob. Once again, Bob Bruner, man's been a beast inside the Drink Curious community. He posted something he thought we would like. This is from a distillery called Glens Creek, and they create a vodka called the, I don't even know how to pronounce it, Sotit Otit Special Family Reserve. Anyway.
S''OTIT. You all figure out how it's pronounced.
That's right. And I love it when a distillery doesn't take themselves too seriously, and they play into just the bullshit that's out there. So I'm going to read the description of this product on their website. Our 100 proof, nearly zero taste vodka is available online. Commodore Borislav Alexander Sotit wanted a near tasteless alcoholic beverage for his sailors to replace more expensive rum and limit dependence on water, which tended to go bad on long voyages. The vodka is distilled in Romanian copper and gold stills that were handcrafted by the Commodore himself. Glens Creek Distillery was entrusted to make this pure, nearly tasteless distilled spirits because the family felt that it must be made by truly tasteless distillers. We fit that description and wear the title with pride. And remember that being tasteless doesn't mean being classless. So enjoy responsibly. I love it. Absolutely love
it. A tasteless distilled spirit must be made by truly tasteless individuals.
So clearly, you and I should be making vodka. That's our calling. Who knew?
No, it ain't.
We don't have to drink it.
We have immense taste. We have immense taste.
We have immense taste, right? All right. Well, I have no taste after that craft shoot segment. Just saying.
No, yeah, me not much either. No, not much either.
All right. So I thought that was a fun way to start, and I love it when people don't take themselves too seriously because, folks, this is alcohol. It's not brain science. We're not saving lives. So remember, keep it light. Drink curious, have a lot of fun. Bob, what do you got for me for bourbon bullshit?
Well, I betrayed the Drink Curious community, and I found myself, unfortunately, in the land of the devil. I was in a Total Wine a week ago.
What you talking about?
Because everybody else was closed on a Sunday afternoon. Bastards close up early, and I needed to get a gift for a friend, and so I went into the Walmart of whiskey, and I felt dirty going in there. I felt dirtier coming out. But I'm in there, and, I'm reminded I had to get some scotch for a friend. And on the opposite aisle of the scotch is like back to back in the middle of the store with the American whiskey and all the bourbon. Now, unfortunately, my wife says I don't listen for shit. But unfortunately, I could hear everything in there as I was going, and I could hear these people behind me talking, looking for something, and I'm waiting for somebody to open up a case to get this bottle of scotch. And I just can't be quiet in situations like this, Pops, you know me. And they're looking there, and I said, and they go to pick up, I forget what the hell it was. It was something that I got them to put back down. I don't know, maybe it was pot still or some shit like that. But, it's like, no, don't do that to your taste buds. Don't do that to yourself. It's like, well, what do you think we should do? I said, well, what do you drink typically? It's like, well, I like the Yellowstone and the Willet Rye. I'm like, okay, so here's somebody who's been sold something by a person on the, sales team at Total Wine and doesn't really know what the hell they're doing. And I say, well, have you tried this Old Forester 1920? Oh, I haven't really done much with the Old Forester. I'm like, okay, well, that tells me you really haven't done shit to begin with. So we're talking about, and that's one thing that is a universal recommendation. I'm not a huge fan of Old Forester, but I know that 1920 hits a lot of sweet spots for a lot of people and is an easily accessible bottle. It's a little higher priced. I asked him what he was looking to spend. I gave him that. I gave him Rare Breed. But it's clear that the guy's just standing there looking for stuff with his buddy and pretending like he knows something, he really doesn't know shit. So, folks, if you consider yourself an enthusiast, but you don't know much about bourbon, do a little research if you're going in to look for a new bottle. Especially don't count on people at Total Wine who are going to sell you fucking 2 stars or some Winchester bullshit that they've got sitting there. And there's a reason that these large distilleries have been around. There's a reason that the Russell's name has been synonymous with bourbon for 60 years. So just fucking do a little homework. Don't go in looking at whatever pretty bottle, is gonna get you where you need to go. Come on now. Just do a little research.
I think research is key. I finish every one of the tastings that I host, and I give people my email address. And I tell them, I said, any questions you have, always feel to reach out. But don't email me when you're in the store. It's too late. I don't respond that quickly, right? It's all about the research. Do a little planning. Find, whether you trust our palates or not. We have a lot of people who write for Bourbon and Banter, so there's someone there that's going to align. Read their reviews. Find out, whose palate you align with, and go with them and trust them, right? Read other websites, read other groups. But you're absolutely right. All too often, you're going to run into, when you rely on a single person, right, you're going to fall in the trap of their experience, which is what they've had, and their personal preferences. So always have a couple different sources, right? You can't rely on one source. And then that's the thing. And once again, the store people are hit and miss. A lot of the smaller shops, specialty shops, are going to have a couple people, and they're really good at whiskey. But even sometimes they're not there. They have lives too. So once again, they become one of the sources. So do your research. There's plenty of things out there you can read, and not just Bourbon and Banter and Drink Curious. A lot of other great sites who do a good job. So take away, if nothing else, do your research and don't rely on your buddy Bob or Pops or Frank or Steve to be your only source of recommendations, because you could wind up wasting a lot of money. And yes, definitely, if it's a pretty bottle, 9 times out of the 10, run away.
That's the Pop's talking about the smaller shops, smaller local shops. We do have the bigger stores. There's chain stores in your area, wherever you're listening, I'm sure. But if you find those independently owned shops, especially those independently owned shops that do single barrels, you can go in. Oftentimes you can taste. They might have a tasting bar for their single barrels, so they want people to try it and buy bottles. And those folks, more often than not, are going to be much more valuable in their information, and they're not looking to push an agenda of an item that is exclusive to their shop. That, whole spirits directs bullshit. But I remember the guy was picking up a bottle of a 2-year-old craft whiskey that is made in the region here. And that's where I came up behind him. I said, man, don't do that to yourself. Don't buy that. You know, the folks are good. They're good folks. They're sweet people there, boy, but the shit's just too young, and you're spending $40 or $45 on a craft whiskey that you're just going to be disappointed in. So take that money and buy something that is tried and true, especially if you're just getting into things. You know, it's one of those things. People have been distilling this stuff for a long time, and the folks that have been around for a long time, there's a reason they've been around for a long time, is because they're making good shit. So check it out.
Absolutely. And as we head into the holiday season, which I think is a nice segue to kind of our big bourbon bullshit topic today, Bob, holiday gifting. So where do you go with recommendations? Who do you trust? Right. So we thought, you know, as one of your sources of information, we're going to give you some thoughts, because by the time you listen to this, it's going to be full-fledged holiday shopping season. You're going to be looking for new things out there. And I'm going to start off with tips for shopping here with just say, first of all, we've said it years before, but we get new listeners all the time. Do not buy a whiskey lover in your life whiskey stones. Absolutely don't do it. If you gift whiskey stones, there's a new rule in town that the recipient gets to throw those stones back at you one by one.
And you're tied up so you can't run away. The only accessory that you are guaranteed to give your whiskey-loving gift recipient that will be welcomed and appreciated is a Glencairn. Because not everybody uses ice, so the fancy ice molds aren't going to work for everybody. Not everybody makes cocktails. Some of the folks just like to drink stuff neat. But everybody who is an experienced and serious bourbon or American whiskey drinker will appreciate more Glencairns. We always will.
Right. The Glencairn whiskey glass is a classic, and it works. It's my favorite. There's plenty of other whiskey glasses out there. If that's one that you prefer, so be it. But a good, solid whiskey glass for drinking neat is always a hit. And I have a ton of them, and I always welcome more because they can break. I give them away to people. I take them to events. So you're never going to.
And it's the holidays. You're busy. You don't want to do dishes all the time.
That's right.
So you can line 3-4 dozen of these up on a counter and wait and put them all in the dishwasher at once.
Absolutely. That's right.
And they're under $10 a piece, folks.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a nice little something you can add to a bottle that you might want to give somebody. And speaking of bottles to give somebody, always think about what those folks are drinking. What are they drinking usually? You know, you don't want to buy somebody who drinks an 80 proof bourbon, 135, proof, barrel proof, monster. That's not a good call. But, folks will look at stuff, it's got a pretty bottle. They want to give, just for example, they want to give an Angel's Envy, which is a premium product with a pretty bottle, and it's a finished bourbon. So if somebody likes that, but you want to get them something different, I mean, I recently had the Davies County finished stuff, which is from Luxrow, which is a St. Louis-based company. But those bottles are all right around $30. And they've got a Napa Cab finish, which I didn't mind. I'm not a big Angel's Envy fan, but, I mean, just as an alternative, if you don't have, $50 or $60 to spend on that and you want to get them something you won't try, there's an option for you. If you do want to spend more and you want to give them something they haven't had, Barrel does a lot of stuff, and they've got some nice finishing in that Dovetail that's finished in the port wine and the rum barrels. So there's a lot of things there, but I'm always a big believer in less is more. You can get a basket of whiskey for what you would spend on a $100 bottle that will be appreciated and enjoyed and consumed for a lot longer by your gift recipient than you can going out and buying a $100 and $150 bottle of whiskey.
Well, and in this day and age with cell phones, and if you have someone who has a burgeoning bourbon collection, reach out to their spouse or their partner, whoever it may be. Say, hey, take a picture of the bourbon collection. I want to see what they don't have, or I want to see what they like, right? just a little bit of research, right? Once again, we're going to harp on this research thing. But I want to talk about something that's popular, Bob, and I know this is something we have a lot of opinions on. I'm gonna pitch it. I'm going to come up with my first riff on it, and then I'm going to let you build on it. And that is, whiskey advent calendars have been big for the last couple of years. This is where you buy from a trusted, reputable dealer, and you got to be careful because there's a lot of rip-off artists out there with these advent calendars, but you basically get a little sample of whiskey for each day of Advent, right? The advent calendar concept. And Drinks by the Drams has always been our trusted partner. They offer a lot of different selections, different styles of whiskeys, and they're a safe choice, but buy directly from them or one of their trusted suppliers, right? Last year, there was a lot of people buying it off these Facebook ads. Bourbon and Banter contributor Jeff Schwartz wrote a nice piece about this rip-offs. People are getting trinkets instead of bottles. So be careful. But if you really want to put a nice spin on this, right, and you want to give a really cool gift, create your own, right? Go out, take bourbons from your own selection if you're a bourbon drinker, right, and buy some little Boston Round sample bottles, pour them in there, give them in a nice box. You can do a shoe box, you can do a nicer box, whatever you want to do. If you live with a bourbon lover, here's a really fun idea, is create the advent calendar, but instead make a little treasure hunt out of it, right? Put a bottle somewhere else in the house and leave little clues. There's lots of fun ways to present this concept of a sample a day leading up to the holidays. Now, Bob's shaking his finger at me. You can't see this.
I don't want to go looking through the damn house to find my whiskey.
That's because your onesie will crawl up and expose yourself. I understand.
No. If you're gonna do that, just give me the shit. Just give me one a day. That's fine. Don't make me go fucking hunt for it.
Come on.
Don't make me hunt
sense
for
of
it.
Adventure, Bob.
There does not need to be exercise involved in your bourbon journey.
Whiskey on the shelf is better than Elf on the shelf. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but then put it on the shelf and say, here it is. Go have a drink.
You put a little 30, 50 mil sample on one of my bourbon shelves. I'll never see it.
Yeah, well, you put it someplace where you will see it. Put it by your toothbrush.
All right.
Have a nip before you go to bed and have a nip when you get up in the morning.
Well, so the Grinch version is put it right on the kitchen table so when you come down in the morning. The Pops version is have a little fun with it. But once again, the idea is that you can craft something yourself, and it'll be a little bit better, because the one downside of the advent calendars, and Bob and I were talking about this in advance, is they're great for people who are just starting their whiskey journey. But if you're someone who's been drinking for a couple of years, a lot of times the samples that are in those advent calendars are going to be things you've already had or things that maybe you're not going to enjoy. So once again, read the descriptions a little bit and know the person you're buying for. Once again, comes back to a little bit of research, a little bit of pre-thinking on the topic, and ultimately you can create a pretty cool gift with a little bit of effort.
And you can do it not just with bourbon, but you can pair pours with food, pours with chocolates, or nuts, or cheeses, or things like that, so that you create a whole experience for somebody. Instead of just drinking, they have a little something. And think about it, what folks really want in a gift, at least for me, I want something that has a personal connection to it, that shows me that somebody put thought into this instead of just going out and buying, whatever bottle. And if you're able to do that, as Pop said, buy some of the Boston Round bottles. I mean, those things, you can get them on Amazon. If you need 20 of them, order 30, because 10 of them will break on the shipping. But you'll get those in, and you can go to your own collection and pour stuff that you like or that you think this person might like, and then arrange your own box of bourbon gifts. I would love to receive something like that. Absolutely. From bourbon folks. Again, I say I would love to receive something like that from my bourbon friends.
If you're looking
I would love to receive something like that from my bourbon friends. So,
all right. So what I'm
but you pair it with cheeses and nuts and chocolates
or
and
donuts,
dried fruit and things like that. You can pair them with donuts. Now, if you need a donut recommendation, donut recommendations for your bourbon are available by emailing us at podcast@bourbonbanter.com. You send us your Venmo information, and for a small fee, we'll make sure to make those recommendations for you. You can also pair it with things like breakfast cereals. Perhaps you want bourbon for breakfast. And, right now is actually the time, folks, because Halloween was just a few weeks ago. You can stock up on those discounted Monster cereal boxes. And, there's so you want to talk about the fruitiness of the Dickel, the Flintstone vitamin thing happening.
Right.
But if you pair that up with some Flintstones, some Fruity Pebbles and some other stuff like that, you might be getting somewhere. But I encourage folks to go and look, and I say it every year, but I will continue to say, and I've already said, the basket of bourbon, and you go and you get something like an Evan Williams Bottle and Bond, a Wild Turkey 101, you get something that you get a Wyoming whiskey, give them a different take on a wheater. You get them some 1792. Just there's all kinds of bottles that are under $30 that you can put all those in. If you think you're going to spend $100 to $200 on a gift for somebody, you could get 5, 6, 7 bottles of bourbon for that and do some nice things. Or always look at store picks. When you've got a place that you really enjoy and you've discovered their palate is suitable to yours, that's something you can only get at one place. I always like to give store picks if I can, as opposed to single barrels that are just generally available, because it's a unique thing that folks can always give. And here's my last thing I'll say on this, and I'll take it from the bourbon police if they want to come at me, or the whiskey police or whoever. But for my money, for my opinion, the best readily available whiskey on the market today is single barrel Jack Daniels. And a lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people are like, Jack Daniels, fuck that. It's Tennessee. No, I'm not touching that. This is different than every other product that distillery has ever made before or since. And if you've got somebody who loves bourbon, loves American whiskey, I'm betting you a large portion of them haven't tried that single barrel proof, not the regular single, the barrel proof Jack Daniels. So that is one. If you give it to them, and then if you can find it, and then you have to cover the bottle perhaps and pour them a sample so they taste it, not knowing what it is, and they don't form those opinions. Same kind of thing with Wild Turkey. You got somebody who's just getting into bourbon, get some Wild Turkey, put it in a different bottle, because everybody has that story from when they were 16, 17, 18. If you're in Arkansas, 12, 13, 11, whatever, And they all have those stories about how they got loaded on Wild Turkey when they were a kid and they never touch it. Oh, Wild Turkey 101, or that sort. But if you put it in an unmarked bottle and you pour a little, boy, this is really good. What isn't? You tell them it's Wild Turkey 101, and their jaw will hit the floor because they have all these preconceived notions. And if you remove preconceived notions, folks, you're going to dig some Wild Turkey 101. This message brought to you from your friends at Bourbon and Banter.
Well, Wild Turkey, as I say in my tastings, is the most underrated distillery in the entire country. So I endorse Bob's point of view on that. The Jack Daniels cast strength single barrels are delicious as well. And I'm going to do a little plug here. If you want something kind of fun, check out our online store, shop.bourbonbanter.com. And this store has been around for a long time, but I have to tell you right now, it's probably going to be taking a little bit of a pause at the end of November. So if you want something in our store, shop.bourbonbanter.com, head over there before the end of the month and get what you need. There's some cool stuff in there because we're going to take a little pause. We're going to reinvent a couple things as part of what we're doing with Drink Curious in that community. But that's a fun thing, and there's plenty of other people that have some cool things out there. A good T-shirt, a good hat. Oh, it's a nice
let me
choice.
Tell you something. All you big folks out there, you folks that that you can't go buy off the rack, we've got you taken care of. The shit is comfortable, it fits, and it's hip. And it's the kind of thing that any bourbon fan would love. We've got some great things. So those of you out there that are always looking for sizes and cursing when you walk into the store because they don't have stuff that'll fit you, you can come to Bourbon and Banter. We got your back.
And if you need something larger than it's listed, that's a great point, Bob. If you need something larger than is listed, let me know. Drop us a note, podcast@bourbonbanter.com, because we can do some custom sizes even larger. We just don't have them listed on the site, whatnot. But I'm glad to hook you up. I've had several people over the years we've done that far who are thrilled because no one else is doing that. And as big guys, we appreciate that and are going to make sure we can deliver for you as well. So all fantastic tips. And, once again, if you're really, really at a loss, drop us a note, podcast@bourbonbanter.com. We'll come up with some ideas, sure to make you the hero for any whiskey lover in your life. All right, folks. Well, that is bringing us to the end of the 29th episode. That's right. December is going to be the big 3-0. for the podcast here at Bourbon and Banter. But as always, Bob and I appreciate you tuning in, giving us your attention, and hopefully keeping that car between the lines as you're driving and listening to the podcast. But once again, if you have questions, comments, feedback, drop us a line at podcast@bourbonandbanter.com. We'll read the good stuff, we'll delete the bad stuff, and if you make us laugh, we'll feature you on the next podcast episode. Make sure you head over to podcast.bourbonbanter.com. You can catch up on all the old episodes. And once again, if you're curious about joining Drink Curious, head over to drinkcurious.com/community. Get all the information and sign up for that as soon as possible.
And as we are into holiday time now, folks, and a lot of people are going to be spending some time with folks that may just push them a little bit over the edge, I have one word for all of you: flask.
And on behalf of everyone at Bourbon and Banter, thanks again. And remember, if you're going to drink,
drink curious.
Well, what's your preference?
Bourbon, if you got it.
Bourbon from Kentucky.
I should certainly fucking hope so.